Number 6, exercises that will make your chest stupidly strong and developed after 40. The chest is the favorite muscle at the gym and also one of the most poorly trained. Even after doing bench press week after week, the chest remains flat without volume, without definition. If that is your case, I will tell you right now that the problem is that you are probably not recruiting all portions of the chest. You are not respecting fiber orientation, and you are ignoring factors that make all the difference. That is why today you will see the 6 exercises that will leave your chest stupidly strong and developed, divided into 2 weekly workouts designed for people over 40 years old. Stay tuned until the end, because you will also receive 3 extra tips that 90% of people do not apply, and that, according to research, improve chest hypertrophy by up to 27%. Before we begin, please leave a comment with your name and your main training challenge today. We will do our best to read as many comments as possible. Exercise number 1, incline Smith machine bench press. The beauty of this exercise lies in its ability to directly target the upper chest, which is, without a doubt, the most difficult portion of the entire muscle to develop. And do you know why that happens? The upper chest has a muscle insertion that places it at a mechanical disadvantage in most pushing movements. This means that, without specific and targeted work, it simply falls behind while the mid and lower chest steal all the stimulus. The incline Smith machine bench press is especially valuable for people over 40 because the guided bar eliminates the need for lateral stabilization, reducing stress on the shoulders and wrists. You can focus all your attention on chest muscle recruitment without dividing energy between balancing the bar. The primary muscle worked here is the clavicular head of the pectoralis major, assisted by the anterior deltoid and triceps as synergists. To execute correctly, adjust the bench to an angle between 30 and 45 degrees. Angles above that start recruiting more anterior deltoid than chest, and you lose the purpose of the exercise. Position yourself on the bench so that the bar, at the lowest point of the movement, is at the level of the upper chest, near the clavicle. Before lowering the bar, perform scapular retraction, meaning squeeze your shoulder blades together and gently push your chest upward. This positioning protects the shoulder and dramatically improves chest recruitment. Lower the bar in a controlled manner until it lightly touches the upper chest. Then press back up without fully locking the elbow at the top. A tip that makes a real difference. At the point of peak contraction, try to squeeze your elbows toward each other, as if you wanted to bring your forearms together. You cannot actually perform that movement with the bar in your hands, but the mere intention of the gesture noticeably increases chest fiber recruitment. The most common mistake is letting the elbows flare out too far to the sides, placing the shoulder in a risky position and transferring the effort to the joint instead of the muscle. Another classic mistake is using an excessive bench angle, the infamous bench set nearly at 90 degrees, which turns the exercise into a glorified shoulder press. Perform 3 sets of 8 to 10 repetitions with a load that allows controlled execution on every repetition. Rest 90 to 120 seconds between sets. Exercise number 2, low cable crossover. One more movement focused on the upper chest, since we know it is a weak point for many people, and for that reason, it should come first. When it comes to isolating and truly feeling the chest working, few exercises come close to the low cable crossover. What makes this exercise particularly valuable is that it trains the chest in horizontal adduction with constant resistance throughout the entire range of motion. Unlike a dumbbell, where the tension drops dramatically at the point of peak contraction, the cable keeps the muscle under load from start to finish. To execute, position the pulleys at hip height or below. Grab the cables and take a step forward to create tension. With a slight forward lean in the torso, feet slightly apart for stability, begin the movement by pulling the cables in an upward arc, as if you were hugging a large tree. Keep the elbows slightly bent throughout the entire movement. At the point where the hands cross, hold the contraction for 1 second before returning. Regular practitioners who pause at the contraction report a much greater sense of activation than those who perform the movement continuously without a pause. This occurs because the momentary isometric hold recruits additional motor units that would not be activated otherwise. The main mistake to avoid is using the arms like a curl, excessively bending the elbow to help the weight come up. The movement should come from the chest, not from biceps strength. Another mistake is letting the torso swing forward and backward with momentum, taking the focus away from the target muscle. Perform 3 sets of 8 to 12 repetitions. The weight here does not need to be heavy. What matters is the quality of the contraction. Exercise number 3, high cable crossover. If the low cable crossover trains the upper chest, the high cable crossover closes the loop, targeting the lower and central portion of the chest with a tension quality that bench press simply cannot replicate. Both crossover variations together in the same session form one of the most efficient pairings that exist for complete muscle development. With the pulley positioned above the head, the movement of pulling the cables down and toward the center accurately replicates the anatomical function of the pectoralis major, adduction, and shoulder flexion. You are essentially training the muscle exactly the way it was designed to be trained. To execute, position the pulleys at shoulder height or above. Grab the cables, take a step forward, lean the torso slightly forward, and pull the cables in a downward arc, bringing your hands toward your hips or navel height. Think of the movement as if you were hugging someone around the waist, bringing your arms from above downward and inward. Keep the elbows slightly bent. At the point of peak contraction, cross the hands slightly and hold for 1 second. An important tip: many people make a serious mistake in this exercise by letting their shoulders rise toward their ears during the movement. That is a sign that the trapezius is taking over the work. Before pulling, lock the shoulders down and keep them there throughout the entire execution. The most frequent mistake is opening the arms too wide during the eccentric phase, reaching a point where the shoulders become completely vulnerable. Control the opening. Tension already exists with the arms at 45 degrees of lateral opening. There is no need to go beyond that. Perform 3 sets of 8 to 12 repetitions. It can be done in the same workout as the low cable crossover, preferably after it. Before we continue, do not forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Exercise number 4, flat bench press. The flat bench press performed with proper technique and real muscular intent is something completely different from the lying down and pushing that you see in most gyms. The barbell flat bench press, when executed well, is one of the best compound exercises for the mid-chest and for developing horizontal pushing strength. For people over 40, it remains relevant, but deserves extra care in shoulder setup. To execute safely and efficiently, lie on the bench with your feet firmly planted on the floor. Grip the bar slightly wider than shoulder width. Before unracking the bar, perform scapular retraction and depression, meaning squeeze your shoulder blades together and push them downward, as if you were trying to put your shoulders in your back pockets. This position protects the shoulder and creates a stable base that noticeably improves chest recruitment. Lower the bars in a slightly diagonal path to the nipple line, never straight toward the neck. Feel the chest being stretched on the way down. Press back up without releasing the scapular retraction. A relevant piece of data. Electromyography research shows that scapular retraction increases chest activation by up to 15% compared to execution with protracted shoulders. That single postural correction alone can completely transform your results. The most serious mistake is letting the elbows flare out to 90 degrees relative to the torso, forming a letter T shape with the arms. This places an enormous amount of stress on the shoulder joints. The correct position is to keep the elbows at approximately 45 to 75 degrees relative to the torso. Perform 3 sets of 6 to 10 repetitions. For people over 40, Moderate loads with impeccable technique always outperform maximum loads with compromised technique. If you do not feel comfortable doing the barbell bench press, you can switch to dumbbells or machines without any problem. Exercise number 5, pullover. The pullover is probably the exercise on this list with the greatest potential and, paradoxically, the most neglected one. It is almost like that coworker who is extremely competent but never gets recognized. The pullover not only works the chest, it also intensely recruits the latissimus dorsi, the serratus anterior, and the triceps, making it an exercise of unique value for overall trunk development. For the chest specifically, the pullover trains the sternocostal head through a range of stretch that no other exercise on this list provides. And hypertrophy studies have consistently shown that training a muscle at its maximum length produces superior growth responses. Can you imagine the impact of that on your daily training? Perform with a dumbbell or cable. With the dumbbell, lie transversely across a bench, supporting only the shoulder blades, with the hips slightly below bench level. Hold the dumbbell with both hands, fingers interlaced under the weight, arms extended above the chest. Lower the dumbbell in an arc behind your head, keeping the elbows slightly bent until you feel a good stretch in the chest and latissimus dorsi. Do not go lower than the point where you start to feel shoulder discomfort. Return in a controlled arc to the starting position. A bonus tip that few people know. When performing the pullover, think of pushing the elbow toward the ceiling on the way back, rather than simply pulling the dumbbell. This mental shift directs more activation toward the chest and less toward the lats, when the primary goal is chest development. The most common mistake is using excessive load and compensating with hip movement or exaggerated lower back arching. The pullover should be performed with a moderate load, prioritizing range of motion and the sensation of stretch. Perform 3 sets of 10 to 12 repetitions with slow and controlled movement, especially during the eccentric phase. Contraindications: people with a history of shoulder pain or instability, particularly in the glenohumeral joint, should use caution. It is recommended to begin with a reduced range of motion and progress gradually. Exercise number 6, chest fly machine. The chest fly machine closes this list on a high note, and there is a very specific reason for it being here. Unlike dumbbell flies, where tension on the chest practically disappears at the point of peak contraction, the machine maintains constant resistance throughout the entire movement, including precisely at the point of maximum adduction. For chest hypertrophy, that detail is the difference between a good exercise and an excellent one. The chest fly machine is a pure isolation of the pectoralis major, particularly the mid-sternocostal portion, with minimal involvement of the triceps and shoulders. For people over 40 who need quality training volume without overloading already tired joints, this is extremely valuable. To execute, adjust the seat so the handles are at shoulder height or slightly below. Sit with your back fully supported against the pad, chest gently projected forward, and shoulder blades retracted. Grab the handles and begin the movement by bringing your arms in an arc, as if you were hugging someone. Keep the elbows slightly bent throughout the entire range of motion. At the point of peak contraction, when the handles meet in front of the chest, hold for 2 seconds and intentionally squeeze the chest. Return slowly and in a controlled manner, feeling the muscle being stretched. The secret lies in the return phase. Many people use the chest fly machine as if it were simply a matter of going back and forth without paying attention to the return movement. The controlled eccentric phase, taking 3 to 4 seconds to open the arms, is where a large portion of hypertrophy occurs. The most common mistake in this exercise is allowing the shoulders to roll forward as the load increases. That is a sign that the load is too heavy, or that scapular retraction was abandoned during the execution. Reduce the load if necessary. Another mistake is opening the arms beyond the safe angle. placing the chest and shoulder ligaments in an unnecessarily risky position. Perform 3 to 4 sets of 12 to 15 repetitions, finishing the workout with this exercise. Because it is an isolation movement with low joint demand, it is ideal as a final exercise, when the stabilizing muscles are already fatigued, but the chest still has working capacity. Now that you know all 6 exercises, let us move on to the 3 extra tips that will multiply your results. Extra tip number 1. Do not let the triceps and anterior deltoid work harder than the chest. This is probably the number 1 saboteur of chest development in gyms. In almost every pushing movement, the triceps and anterior deltoid are present as synergists. The problem occurs when they take center stage and the chest becomes a background player. This happens mainly for 2 reasons: incorrect posture and lack of mind-muscle connection. When the shoulders are protracted forward, the anterior deltoid is in a mechanically advantageous position and dominates the movement. When the grip is too narrow, the triceps takes over. In both cases, the chest loses its stimulus. The correction begins even before you touch the load. Retract your shoulder blades, gently project your chest forward, and perform a conscious contraction of the chest before starting the movement. Muscle activation research shows that the simple intention to contract a specific muscle during exercise, what we call the mind-muscle connection, increases activation of that muscle by up to 20%. In addition, reducing loads to focus on the sensation in the chest, rather than pushing as much weight as possible, is usually the turning point that most people were missing. Extra tip number 2, control the eccentric phase, and do not sacrifice range of motion to increase the load. One of the most common and silent mistakes in chest training is the rush to increase the load, sacrificing 2 things that are worth far more: the eccentric phase and the range of motion. The eccentric phase is the return movement when the muscle lengthens under load. Recent exercise physiology studies demonstrate that the eccentric phase is responsible for approximately 40% of the total hypertrophy stimulus. In addition, it allows you to work with loads approximately 20 to 30% greater than in the concentric phase. When you let the bar drop or open your arms on the fly quickly, you are wasting almost half of your muscle growth potential. And what about range of motion? A study published in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research compared workouts using full range of motion versus partial range of motion on the bench press, and found that the full range of motion group achieved significantly greater hypertrophy gains, even when using lighter loads. The chest needs to be stretched before it can be contracted. Shortening that path to put more weight on the bar is literally trading your results for your ego. Extra tip number 3. Train your chest twice a week. If you are still training your chest only once a week, this tip may be the most impactful of all. The science of muscle hypertrophy has evolved greatly over the last decade, and one of the most solid consensuses to emerge is that training frequency per muscle matters a great deal. The chest, like any muscle, goes through a cycle of elevated protein synthesis after a workout that lasts, on average, 48 to 72 hours. After that, the process drops off and the muscle enters a neutral state until the next stimulus. If you train your chest only on Mondays, you spend the rest of the week with the muscle inactive from a growth standpoint. A meta-analysis published in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research analyzed 10 studies on training frequency and concluded that training a muscle twice a week produces significantly greater hypertrophy gains than training it once, provided total volume is equivalent. In practice, if you perform 16 sets of chest in a single day, splitting that volume into 8 sets on 2 different days of the week produces superior results. For people over 40, splitting the volume also has another benefit. Recovery from each session is easier, which reduces excessive muscle soreness and the risk of injury from accumulated fatigue. If you enjoyed this and want to discover 10 other mistakes that are keeping your chest from ever growing, even if you are doing the right exercises, we have a video appearing on screen right now showing each one of them in detail. Go check it out. Thank you for watching all the way to the end, and God bless you, my friend.